Okay, here we are, everybody. Welcome to a Democrat and a Republican walk
Oh,
into a
I was
bar.
about to say you've been gone so long you forgot about me.
I forgot the title of our show. I also my dog just started barking, so I was really confused. And we're also in a virtual space today.
Yep.
But that's okay. We will have the conversation. So I
Always
am
willing to have.
your Democratic host, Dr. Cindy Banier.
I am your Republican host, Sean Hartman. I dare I ask what you did for July 4th? We have a
I
fun
went to
story.
Cape Coral, red, white, and boom, just like
So
you.
we have a fun story. So we both ran our separate party booths essentially. I was there with the Lee County GOP and she was there with the Lee County Democrats. And for some reason, the city of Cape Coral placed us next to each other.
They have a
And
sense of
so,
humor.
yeah, a very bad one for sure. It was, of course, very copacetic. I got to meet some people who actually watched the show, some fans of ours. So,
Oh, nice.
really excited. I think it was a very fun day. And we met a lot of people in our booth as well who are interested in the Republican Party. So I had a very fun conversation with a gay Republican who will be joining us hopefully at our next Young Republican meeting. Really cool dude. It was a very fun conversation. So we had a good time. It looked like you guys had a good time. You guys were giving out glow
Yeah.
sticks, I saw. So
Yeah,
you
glow
know,
sticks. And I was there actually with Howard Sapp for
mm,
Congress campaign. And
mm,
then my campaign too, even though I don't cover Cape Coral, but I had my
yep,
stuff out there too. And then really Kara Rogers for Cape Coral, who's a
yep.
nonpartisan candidate, but she was kind enough to allow us to share the space. And yeah, so it was a good day.
Mm.
Always good to get out and
And
talk
I
to
ap- and I
people.
and I appreciate the civility that we had between our booths. There wasn't really
Yeah.
any, and I don't know unless I left at 9. I don't know if someone started punching after I left, but from what I
No, I
understand,
was
yeah,
no, we everybody was fine. Everybody
yep,
was good.
it was very civil.
Some of the usual suspects. It was really dark, and they tried to offer me literature, and I'm like, no thanks. It's like
I was
if it was brighter out, I don't think you'd be trying to hand me that. But
I could tell you the images of us sitting together have rubbed some Republicans the wrong way. So we're probably gonna have a talk with City Council in the future. But
I think that
again,
they just put everybody. I think they put all the political candidates next
that's
to
what
each
I
other.
think because we had Jim Oberweis next to us as well, and we had a make it very clear to people that we have not endorsed Jim Oberweis, because he is one of about 10,000 other people who are running for Congress right now for the Republican primary, soon to be joined by about 10,000 other people, I'm sure. Which is, of course, why I've just been so wound up tight over all of it. It is to me, I am weirdly enough not looking forward to this upcoming congressional race, if I'm being honest.
Interesting.
Yep.
I'll be interested to see who pops their head out.
Yep.
Of course, on the Democratic side, we have the one and the only Reverend Howard Sapp, who's carrying the mantle for the Democratic side. I
Yep.
will say that on that race, so here we can start because we took off June, but part of the reason that we were on hiatus is because I was actually traveling with the Reverend to Washington, D.C. for what had originally been planned a Juneteenth celebration at the White House. That was canceled
Yep.
at the last minute, actually. So Howard is also a critically acclaimed gospel singer, and he had been invited to
Oh yes,
perform
yes, you did. I
at the
remember you
White
telling
House
me.
for Juneteenth. And then Trump had decided that he didn't want to do that, and they canceled the whole event.
Which
At
is
that.
which is disappointing and really something that is unnecessary. I get a lot of like the Republicans are, oh no, Juneteenth is woke and it's a second Independence Day, but Juneteenth is actually a wonderful part of our American history. It's something to be celebrated. It's why the Black community has been celebrating it for so many years.
Mhm.
It's really and the reason they call it a a second Independence Day, and it's more of an emancipation. I would describe it as an emancipation day, really,
Sure.
as opposed to an Independence Day. But it's really the day that we started really living the values of the Declaration of Independence, that all men were created equal.
Yeah.
Through that and through the Galveston community being the last people and finally all the United States being free. And so
Yeah.
it is something to celebrate. It is something that is a patriotic positive, if you will. It's a great part of our American history, the destruction of the original sin of slavery. So I don't see why and even back when he ran in 2020, Trump was proposing a Juneteenth national holiday, but because Biden did it, he's all butthurt about it. No, you should. I feel like you should have celebrated it. He made it too big of a deal than it needed to be.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, we had been planning this, and I know the
Yeah.
organizers were planning, and then there was a lot of stuff going on, which I'm sure we're going to get into at the time. And then the
Uh-huh.
organizers got back to us and were like, "Oh, well, we don't know," and so we just ended up not going. But that was one of the reasons, as well as with the Protect our Parks tour, which
Yeah,
was
yeah, you were definitely. I do know that was the main reason you were going out, is going through our national parks.
well, we were going like west and then going back east. We were going to
Mm.
end in Washington, D.C. was the plan.
Mm.
But yeah, so for 2 weeks, went with my colleague at Save Our Democracy, and we went to check out what was going on in the parks and to see what the cuts had done, and just to talk about the value of preserving the parks for
Yep.
future generations.
So that's a perfect transition to one of our other parks that has been in the news quite recently. I know you were out there over at Alligator Alcatraz. Why don't you tell us about that? How is it looking over there at
Well,
the
it's looking
dangerous
pretty
prison?
shitty, Sean. Actually, so now I don't know if anybody's been following, but I have a clip that's going viral currently through Occupy Democrats. There's over 500,000 views on it. Basically, where I'm talking about, questioning like where all the poop is going to go and whether or not shit is going to be dumped into the Everglades, because this is essentially a logistical nightmare.
Yep.
But yeah, so that's there's going to be a lot of shit one way or another. But yeah, so there has been a big pushback from the indigenous community based on it being sacred land and near reservations and the environmental cause. The indigenous youth, I joined a rally that they had that was focusing on the human rights abuses and the potential of that. And then that was the day that Trump and DHS Secretary Kristi Noem and DeSantis and Othmeyer and everybody else went for a big photo op there. And it was a very interesting day, to be honest. The amount of media was like staggering to me.
I
Like
saw.
it was
No, it's
people
just
from all
definitely
over the world.
national and international coverage.
Yeah.
It's surprising how I give props to the branding for sure. I I
Yeah,
mean,
they
so
put those signs up right away, didn't they?
that
They're
was
actually
pretty.
calling it Alligator Alcatraz. That's
Yes,
actually the name.
that is the actual name. I'm sure if you look it up on Google Maps, you can see it as alligator. I haven't tried it yet, but we should probably check that out. Anyway, this is actually something that I sort of agree with you on, probably for different reasons. I understand the need of finding facilities for legal deportation. There's been a proposal. The one that I've liked was the proposal for one of the military bases in Homestead. There are other places that I think we can do something like this. The two reasons I'm concerned about this alligator Alcatraz is the environmental, like you said, the shitty situation, if you will. I mean, the arguments that I've been hearing, oh, it's already existing, there's already planes that go there, not to the extent that is going to be coming and going. That will lead to a level of pollution that will affect the Everglades ecosystem. And for me, when I first heard about this, I was actually shocked because Ron DeSantis, compared to other Republican governors, has really been one of the more conservation and pro-environmental governors compared to like Rick Scott and any of the other. I think I really do. I think
I
there's a
mean,
lot of
he tried to say that, but it was largely bullshit. Speaking of shit.
there's a lot of good that he has done for our natural resource. Florida has a wonderful natural environment, and to be a conservative means to conserve what is great about your community, and that involves, especially in the state of Florida, our natural environment and the Everglades. So to be a conservative means in my opinion, to protect the Everglades. So I do see an environmental problem that comes with this situation, but the other issue that I don't think anyone is catching is that this is a public safety problem. There's this myth going around that Alligator Alcatraz is a safe and secure location. I it's like an ogre or an onion. I'm gonna peel back these layers because there's a lot of problems with this myth. First off, Alcatraz was an island surrounded by sharks, and I remember correctly, also frigid cold water. So when you escaped, sharks are very good at killing. They are natural born killers. They can smell blood from miles away. They are much more deadly than alligators. Anyone who's driven down Alligator Alley knows that alligators are basically old retirees who sunbathe all day. Also, if you think about it from the alligator's perspective, you're actually, let me go back even further than that. The Everglades is not an island surrounded by water, it's wetland. Emphasis on the land. So you're not swimming, you're wading. And then if you look at it from an alligator's perspective, unlike a shark, which may have a full proper image because it's on your side, alligators are looking up and seeing what is to them a 50-foot giant. They're not going to try to eat you. They're probably going to run away from you. Also, let's assume that we have like a drug cartel guy who's been working in Mexico and Nicaragua and Central America. Someone like that, someone who's probably grown up in like the jungles of Nicaragua or the Darien Gap, probably wouldn't be too scared of the Everglades. All right. Also, and this is really the part that really got me, it is extremely close to US 41 and Alligator Alley. So the fact that, oh, no one can escape, no one's gonna escape. Yeah, it'll be an uncomfortable escape maybe, but it is possible for them to escape, and it is possible to get into a road to either maybe kidnap someone on the road and take their car, or maybe they have someone who will pick them up. All right, this is not a secure location. All right,
It's also really close to international waters, by the way.
Also close to international waters.
All you have to do is cross Alligator Alley, and it's not too far to international waters.
Yep. It is not as safe as people are making it out to be.
I mean, it's political theater. So I actually want to reel back. So, like, for those of you that have not heard how this came about, this was actually the brainchild of Florida AG James Uthmeyer, and he did like a presentation. As you know, he's like, yeah, we want to get more of these things here. Call it Alligator Alcatraz. Just kind of threw this idea out there, and they ran with it. It's like this guy's shitty idea, and he just kept going, right?
He's clearly afraid of Matt Gaetz challenging him for the AG spot, so he's trying to make a name for himself. There's already one Republican primary challenger named Steve Leskovich out of Charlotte County, but he's a relatively unknown. And then Matt Gaetz is thinking about running for attorney general, and so that's what I really think it is. This
was just like a thing that this dude did to be a bigger asshole than Matt Gaetz.
I wouldn't say to be a bigger asshole than Matt Gaetz, but essentially it is to out-conservative him. I would argue it's a possible motivation.
Coming up with a fucking stupid name of a stupid place that's impossibly like configured is conservative. There's nothing conservative about this. There's nothing conservative about the environment. And by the way, let's talk about the funds. Speaking of conservative, okay, this is not fiscal conservative. This is $450 million that was appropriated without any sort of oversight, technically from hurricane relief funds, but by the way, has not been applied for to FEMA. So this has been taken out of Florida state coffers that have not been budgeted for anything and have not been reimbursed by the federal government. So this defies fiscal conservatism, in my opinion.
That is a very fair argument as well. I had also heard that the money was supposed to be coming from FEMA, which, especially given what has been going on in Texas, this is not something that FEMA needs to be funding. FEMA needs to really be focused on disaster relief, which is their main priority. If anything, this needs to be funded by ICE or immigration, which also brings another question that is now being brought up, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this. Is Alligator Alcatraz a state facility or a federal facility? And I'm hoping you know where I'm going with this too.
I mean, it's a state facility.
Okay.
It has not. It's on state land. It's in the state park. It was built with state dollars. Okay. And so it's a state facility right now. There are legal maneuvers that are being taken by DHS right now to distance themselves from this facility because they have not paid for it. And I honestly, my read is that this is going to become an administrative hot potato, that it's going to be this place. They're going to run all these folks through, but the state's going to go, oh no, it's not us, it's the feds. And the feds are going to go, oh no, it's not us, it's the state. And they're going to kick it around. And this is how they're going to get around the environmental lawsuits that there already are. Any, sort of other legal migration issues that there are. This is how they're going to get around it through creating chaos and murkiness with the administration of it.
Which I also have a huge problem with. So this came up with some of your Democratic colleagues who were trying to visit the facility. So there's statutes
Correct.
on the book that allow for legislators to visit correctional facilities at any time without notice.
Correct.
A few of the Democratic legislators, and let's be honest, I know you'll probably disagree with me on this, but it was a publicity stunt. But they're allowed, regardless of it, they're legally allowed to have access to it. They were told no, one, because they were told initially that it was a federal facility,
Mhm.
and because of safety concerns, which is another conversation altogether. But again, that's where that comes up. If it is a federal situation, there's going to be lawsuits against the federal government that they're going to have to deal with. And like you said, they didn't officially purchase it. So if this is a state organization, then then that bears its own problems and own sets of issues. In my opinion, it needs to be a federal facility because immigration is a federal issue. All
Yeah.
right. I'm okay. I am absolutely okay with, and first of all, I'm not okay with this particular property, but again, I am okay with providing state facilities or public facilities in order to affect the legal deportations. I'm absolutely okay
I
with.
am not.
I understand that. That's where we disagree. That's fine. But I don't like it here. But even if, again, even if we are doing it here, it has to be a federal facility, or at
Yeah.
least taken over, rented by, leased by. It has to be a federal operation. This cannot be the state of Florida doing it, because constitutionally, the state of Florida is not responsible for deportations or immigration policy.
Yeah, and actually, I want to bring up. So this was actually one of my arguments against even the ICE operations, even what is it called, the cooperation agreements, right?
Yeah.
Is that there was going to be encroachment on local budgets with this, because
Yeah.
ICE is a federal agency, it's got federal funding, and it should be taken care of by that. And we, as the state of Florida, or if we're Lee County Sheriff, if we're FMPD, Fort Myers, those taxpayers and those budgets should not be allocated to what otherwise should be federal work.
Yeah.
That is not how this system works, because we have different funding mechanisms and fiscal policies. And frankly, the federal budget is much bigger and has room for a lot more. State, local, municipal budgets do not. Actually,
I agree with you there. Like, I agree with you on that too, because in the sense that since this is a federal mandate, if we're going to be assisting the federal government, we at least at the very least need to be reimbursed by the federal government.
Right.
So that I agree with you on. I think that when you're asking Cape Coral taxpayers to do the job of ICE, ICE needs to pay our Cape Coral taxpayers back, so that way we can lower our taxes here in the city of Cape Coral and still keep our police officers funded.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so this was always a big problem for me. And then, everyone's saying, oh, it's not, it won't be that big of a deal. No, this is not just like, oh, we're doing extra paperwork. You're literally, the officers are going out right now. We've seen this. They're going out and they're engaging side by side with ICE.
Yes.
Instead of doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is keeping their jurisdiction safe from other crime, right? That should be a federal crime. There's a federal jurisdiction. Let them handle it. So this is, and again, I do think that there's a strategic component to it. They're doing this on purpose to muddy it, because it makes it legally more difficult to deal with. But who loses, right? People in the community, the taxpayers, the people who are budgeting for other things in the state. I'm very concerned, because we have to have a balanced budget in the state. It's required in our Constitution, and we just passed the budget, and there was not $450 million to build that facility.
Yeah.
So where's that coming from? It's going to come from somewhere, because we're not a currency issuer. We do not have a fiat currency. We do not have the ability to do that in the same way that the federal government does. So we are beholden to our inputs and outputs. Okay.
Yep.
And if we are spending more, it's going to come from somewhere else, because we simply cannot generate it out of nowhere.
Yeah. So that's the other part of it too. We do definitely need to figure out where this is being funded from. The fact that this is just a magical expenditure. Now, if they're going to get it from FEMA, I don't appreciate it coming out of FEMA. Again, should be coming out of ICE or the Homeland Security, not disaster relief. But if they're going to get it from the federal government, they need to get it. But if they haven't even applied, why not? So yeah, this is a transparency issue when it comes to our government. Regardless if you're Democrat or Republican, you should know how your money is being spent. And we as taxpayers deserve to know where the $450 million, for whether you approve of it or not, I mean,
Right.
obviously, we both disapprove of it for different reasons. But even if you approved of it, you should at least want to know where that $450 million is coming from.
And the accountability component too. I
Yeah,
do not like this. Let's shift the line so we can't be held accountable for things. That's
yeah,
very concerning
it's
because
very shady
we
for sure.
deserve to know who's responsible for somebody, right?
Mm,
For something, whatever it is. I don't care if it's a
yeah,
pothole in the street, like there's a jurisdiction that you can call, right? Like
yeah.
if your streets, flooding, if you have sidewalk issues, there's somebody that you can call, right?
Mm.
Like if we do not have that level of accountability in our government, we are really, really lost.
For sure, I 100% agree with you on that as well. It's definitely so there's a lot of problems with the alligator Alcatraz outside of the branding. But again, this is something that, and even though we mainly disagree on the deportation process of it, I could see multiple areas which would be a better use of property. But regardless of that, what else do you think we should talk about?
What else? I mean, really, it's been a whirlwind because we didn't even get a chance to talk about Iran, which is almost like
Oh my God, yes. That
it's
happened
still
way too
actually
quick.
lingering, by the way. Now, there was talks of a ceasefire, but I don't think that was ever fully hemmed up.
Mhm,
What we know is that there was engagement from Israel with Iran based on intelligence that they claimed that there was enriched uranium leading towards
mhm.
nuclear weapons.
Yeah,
And then,
they've been a month closer to a nuclear weapon for 10 years now, 12 years now.
yeah, about that. And then, so Israel engaged, and then the United States participated in airstrikes.
Yep.
This caused
Blew up a
questions.
mountain.
Right. There was questions as to whether or not the president had the legal authority to do this, or whether or not Congress should. Congress has war powers, but
Yeah.
that's been kind of like very much a sliding scale for the last 50 years.
Mhm.
But and then it was like, here's a ceasefire, but it was never really hemmed up, I believe. And so it's
No,
kind of just
first there was
hanging out there.
Iran gonna attack Qatar and our
Oh yeah.
U.S. bases that ended up
Oh
being a
right.
nothing burger. So my reaction to it, and when I saw it, I was very upset about it initially, but I sort of withhold a full reaction until I knew the retaliation, because that was the question: is how would Iran retaliate, and how would we retaliate against Iran's retaliation? And so it looks like Iran just did like a show of force, essentially. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they're not going to do anything else. Obviously, there's always
Yeah.
Iran has openly said that they are a patient people, and so there's no doubt that they are still an enemy of the United States. But I'm glad we didn't get into the full regime change mode. Um, so that ended quicker than I think any of us expected. So
Yeah.
at least from what we can,
Unfortunately.
at least from what we can, at least from our side of it, we're not, we are not really involved in that war anymore. I mean, if Israel and Iran want to continue to duke it out, that's, Bibi Netanyahu is going to do whatever he can in order to stay in power. That was really my conspiracy theory of it too, is that he knows, with nearly all of the hostages back home and the Hamas war almost ending, then people are going to start asking questions of what did he do, what did he know, and once that investigation happens, that his goose is cooked. It's long overdue on that end because there's been a lot of issues with Bibi Netanyahu. But
Mhm.
when it came to Iran, I think that he basically started that as a sort of wag the dog situation, trying
Sure.
to avoid continuation and hoping to draw us into another forever war. And he failed. And I'm actually, very glad that President Trump, you know, showed strength, but did not go all the way. He did very much almost like what George H.W. Bush did with the Iraq War, where they worked on the mission and then they stopped and didn't go into regime change. So I think it was a general positive. You're disagreeing with me, I can tell.
I mean, there was actually a war with
No,
the
yeah,
first
12-day
in
war
Iraq.
for sure. Yeah,
But they
yeah,
didn't
that's a good
go
point.
into full regime change. But they actually started in the same way, and that was with the clearing of the airspace and all that kind of stuff, as well as dropping bombs. I have been a long time uh, I've for a very long time have disapproved of this expansion of the presidential powers
Yep.
into the war powers.
Yep.
So
You and I very much agree on that.
yeah, I would like to see more going back to what is supposed to be in the Constitution, which is the congressional war powers. Congress gets to determine what is war and when we are engaging in it. And I mean, like I said, this goes back to, Clinton, to W. Bush. Is an airstrike, is clearing the skies, is that war? And I think the answer for me is yeah.
Yeah, duh.
you know,
All these things that haven't been declared wars they're wars. You're absolutely right. Like
right,
we don't call them wars. We don't declare the wars, but they're just military actions. But they're wars, and
right,
so I 100% agree with you. You, me, and Thomas Massey are very much in agreement on restoring
wonderful,
the war powers to Congress where it constitutionally belongs. And
yeah,
let's be clear about this. What the president doing is technically not unconstitutional because Congress having the authorization power to
right.
declare war ceded that through the War Powers Act.
Right. And by precedent, there was this, especially this is a relic of the Cold War. It's the idea that we
Yeah.
wanted to free up the president in the case of a nuke, and you know what I mean? Like that.
And I do think that in certain scenarios having the base of the War Powers Act is important. If we actually get attacked, we need our president to act accordingly. And that's really what it's for. But what has happened is the president has been acting on anything that they wanted. So, what
Yeah,
I would support is a reform of the War Powers Act that would keep the provisions, but tightened the definitions of what would be required for them to implement it. So it would have to be an imminent threat against the United States or against American soldiers or against Americans abroad, and it has to be clearly defined what that
no NATO.
imminent. Yeah, NATO, I guess. Well, NATO by definition per treaty, an attack on
Yeah,
one is an attack on all of us. So by
correct.
definition, if an
Just wanted to
attack
throw
on
that
an
in there for
yeah
you.
an attack on a NATO country would by definition be probably folded into the Congress onto that legislation unless it's specified
Yeah.
otherwise. But that's an entirely different conversation.
Well, so I mean, we did have some things in action along those lines as
Of
well.
course, with NATO, with moving up their defense spending to 5%, Spain
Mhm,
is getting a sort of a leniency period. But that is, again, very good and unfortunately very necessary because of the rise of Russian aggression with Ukraine
mhm.
and, of course, the rise of China as well. So that is an
And the
unfortunate,
unreliability that we've become as a partner.
of course, yeah, unfortunately, that is a part of it as well.
So, but yeah, so that's, even during that conference, Trump had said, would you be acting in the defense of the rest of the NATO as per the treaty? And he said, what depends?
I
Is
don't
it
know. I haven't heard anything like that.
was it Article 5 or whatever, the mutual
Yeah.
reciprocal,
Reciprocal attack. Yeah,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what he said. I don't know. From my understanding is that as long as that his thing is as long as people are paying their bills, he would be willing to defend. And then there's also the question of what does that defense mean? What is the definition of that? Because with I think it's Article 21, if I remember correctly. With the Article 21,
5? I don't
I don't
remember
know,
right
one
now.
of the articles, what this article talks about, it's a very broad provision. So, like for example, the only time it's ever been used is for us, the United States, when we were
9/11.
attacked 9/11. So an attack on us became an attack on all of NATO, and so NATO responded. All of the countries responded in different ways. Some gave military aid. Some actually had
Mhm.
troops on the ground. Some
Yes.
just provided humanitarian aid. So we what is the definition of defense at that point too? Are we just providing military aid or are we putting boots on the ground? So there's a much broader discussion when we talk about when you're defending our fellow NATO countrymen.
Fantastic. So let's return the focus to Florida then, because the other thing that finally happened was the passing of the budget
Yep.
in the state of Florida. And
We got,
then it was
of course,
passed. And then there was some pretty significant vetoes by Ron DeSantis. What do you think of all that process?
I have honestly been more focused on the federal budget, if I'm being honest. But what were some of the vetoes? Enlighten me here.
There was, a lot of line item vetoes that Ron DeSantis put through. And keep in mind, like the Republicans have a supermajority, so it should all kind of be like,
But
you know,
Ben Albritton wasn't going to overturn any veto, so that he already made that very clear. So
right. But you would assume that with a Republican trifecta, that when you come out from your budget, your governor is going to sign.
well,
But
not
he
with this
didn't.
legislature, not with this legislature, with all the infighting that's been happening in our party, not with this legislature. So
Clearly, I mean, a lot of it was, you could chalk it up to actually being more like pork stuff for different individual communities. There was like a school that got axed. There was the public funding. So now this was a little bit weird. There was funding for parks, and then the funding for the parks were axed. That was kind of like a back and forth kind of one. So that was one of the vetoes. I do know that one of the things that did end up in the budget, that was something that I was personally watching, was the K-12, the K-12 funding, specifically for the AICE, the AP programs, and the IB programs. So that's like your gifted and talented students. That was actually taken out in a previous version of the budget, but it was returned back in. So I was happy to see that, because I think that we should continue to have gifted and talented programs and programs where students can excel. So
glad Governor Ron DeSantis saved that. That is actually a very good program. We want excellent students. We want kids to excel, and these are very good education programs. And I think we have strong anti-woke education laws that I think all these programs are complying with. I know that you, of course, are in opposition to that, but we have strong enough legislation that we shouldn't need to eliminate these amazing, gifted academic programs for our students to make all of our Florida students smarter and better and heads over tails above all the other people in the country. So I'm glad that Governor DeSantis kept that in as well.
Well, I mean, that was put in by the legislature and it wasn't removed. So let me put it like that. I was just trying to look to see because I had kind of a list of some of them. A lot of the things that got canned were also Democratic initiatives, which is kind of like typical for politics here. But yeah, so I mean, it was done. It only took them 3 special sessions, 2 extensions, and all of regular session to come up with a budget.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
good job, guys.
Clap for the
yeah, very. Listen, this has been, I think, even Republicans agree, this has been the most disappointing legislative session in the history of history. How can we fuck up such a good supermajority is beyond me. But we need new leadership in the Republican Party. We need a reset. I'm just very disappointed, if I'm just being honest with you guys.
Me too. But
and obviously you for different reasons.
But here's the thing. So this is, and just to like remind everybody where the budget discussion for the state of Florida had actually broken down was that one faction of the Republicans wanted to eliminate property tax.
Yep.
And one wanted to eliminate or reduce sales tax. Right.
Yep.
But the other one relied on increasing sales tax to make up that deficit. So what ended up happening was
no tax,
nothing,
no freaking tax cut. What the hell,
nothing.
guys? No, I think
neither one of them won.
I think there was some other.
Neither one of them got anything.
Places, but there was no sales tax cut, no property tax cut, probably tax cuts elsewhere. And actually, I'm pretty sure there was tax cuts elsewhere. But the 2 main aspects of it, nothing happened with that. So again, just an utter disappointment with that bill for sure. But I do want to say this. Going to do a little self promotion now. I am going to be in the next couple of days. I have been working with the Lee County GOP, setting up podcasts for them, and I will be doing a new podcast with the Lee County GOP called Wonky Talk. and it's going to be about policy. And our first topic is going to be property tax reform. And I'm going to have Jonathan Martin, who's been a was the person who proposed the study and has been sort of researching this position. So we're going to have an in-depth conversation about that property tax reform. That's going to be with the Lead GOP Podcasting Network. That is something I'm excited to talk about, because that's, eliminating property tax would have a very negative effect on local governments, depending on how
Yeah.
you solve that. And then what do you do? Do you give local governments the ability to create another form of tax revenue, such as sales taxes or income taxes? Or is it going to be what I expect it's going to be, and what I'm concerned it's going to be, which is the state's going to give all of the cities and municipalities a set block of money, and they can, there's not going to be any, there's going to be strings attached. Basically, we're going to have to ask Tallahassee for our funds to run our cities. And I have a real problem with that. I think that local governments need to be the people who are taking care of that city. They know their community's needs. They shouldn't be going up to Tallahassee to ask for money. They should be able to raise their own revenue from their own citizens in a way that works for them. And so that's what I really want to figure out is, where do you get the revenue, and what are some of the options there from an in-depth policy discussion? So I'm really excited for that. I'll definitely
Well,
um,
I could definitely tell you that local government units already have the ability to tax and create user fees however they want. They can add sales tax, because like here in Lee County, we have an additional
of course,
one
but don't
cent
they have to
sales
go
tax.
through, they have to go through amendment, right? Like you have to amend the charter. The
um
sales tax
yeah,
we have
there's
to
like a
vote on.
public there's a public process to it and approval, but yeah, I mean it's well for that part of it, but I mean you can actually add additional user fees and things like that. I mean they
Mhm.
do have that process, that
Yeah,
ability. So even the school district, right, the school district added
yeah.
additional tax as well, so
Yeah, there's ways to, so if let's say hypothetically they eliminated the property taxes now, from my understanding, at least like say Cape Coral, for example, you have the public service taxes, which is your taxes on your utility bills and internet. So you can expect that to go up by 100 to 200%. Then you have
oh,
probably.
I was gonna say, hey, speaking of increasing the cost of utilities, that was another thing that we missed.
Oh yes,
The
yes, you were
FPL rate
protesting
hike.
this.
I
Yes,
was
again,
protesting
because
that too.
because our public commissioners don't care about affordability. This is why
Yeah.
I've wanted people to run for the LCEC, to basically run on a don't raise the rates platform.
Yeah.
But yeah, FPL is not LCEC. It's not something that can be democratically elected. It is a
Well, we do
corporation.
have a public utilities commission, which is appointed by Ron DeSantis. You know who serves on that?
A bunch of
Kathleen
nepo babies.
Casadomo's daughter.
I was gonna say a nepo baby for sure.
Yep.
I knew at least one nepo baby.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, no, I dislike this immensely.
Yeah.
And
So
actually, here's what's interesting about this, is that now recently, so I went to the very first public commission, utilities commission hearing on this, which by the way, so if you understand how this works, FPL has kind of like a monopoly over the areas that they serve. It's not like
yeah.
I can't choose LCEC. I get FPL or nothing.
Which I want to stop for a moment. I honestly think that that is the biggest problem out there. If there was actual competition, if the utility itself, the wires and all of that, if that was an actual public utility, and then different organizations can rent those out and then charge accordingly. If there's actual competition, that would lead to lower electricity prices
Yeah.
without the need of government involvement. Anyway, go ahead.
I mean, that could definitely work better than what is happening now, which
Yep.
is then there's this Public Utilities Commission who essentially just green light everything for these utilities
So
because
yeah, so it's basically, it sounds like that you have a government entity controlling the market as opposed to a free market. Am I understanding correctly?
yeah, there's no free
Interesting.
market at all.
Yeah.
It's definitely
This is literally communism, guys. We have a
yeah,
communist utility system.
we do.
That's what we're trying to that's what I
I
want
mean,
to try to get
which was,
across to my
propped
Republican
up
colleagues.
the Republican Party in the state of Florida, which was part of my problem because FPL actually was indicted as funding the ghost candidates against JRR. So, and they have a long history of basically access politics, buying nonprofits and boards and stuff like that. So people won't speak out against them. But a big opponent to this has stepped forward, and that is the local school districts. So at the meeting that I was at, Collier County Public Schools, to their CFO, and another senior leader were there saying, look, the amount of money that this hike is going to cost us, which is 20% increase in rates, is $32 million. It's something like 100 some odd teachers, right? That they're not able to hire just to pay their electric bills. Hendry County came out just this week saying that the FPL hikes are going to make it so they can't hire teachers as well. Keep in mind that we have a teacher shortage already. So this is more than just, and it's going to affect the pocketbooks of families, right? Which is a problem too, but it is also going to be another expenditure for the schools.
Yeah. So again, definitely need changes there. I am absolutely for a free market utility system, but outside of a free market utility system, if we are going to have to survive with this communist People's Republic of Utility system, then that should at least be a proper communist utility system and actually care about the working class and the proletariat who actually have to pay most of these electric bills. Now, thankfully, I live in LCEC territory. Not that they're perfect, but I don't have to worry about this particular price increase. But again, this is something that needs to be brought up during the gubernatorial campaign. Because again, as you said, who appoints these people? The governor. So, and this is definitely something on both sides we should be asking the gubernatorial candidates on, for sure.
Absolutely. And I would love to not see Nepo babies and political picks go on these committees. I mean,
well, I know, and I'm pretty sure you've had a discussion. I don't know what Kathleen Pasadomo's daughter's professional qualifications
just got her law degree a couple years ago. She's got no fucking experience in public utilities whatsoever. Her main qualification was being the Senate president's daughter.
Yeah,
that's why she was appointed.
Yeah. So I'm all for.
Angers me, if you can't tell.
I definitely frustrating. Taking commission jobs from honest, hard-working nepo babies out there instead of.
Ideally, what this should be, if you have, people who would be ideal candidates for the Public Utilities Commission would be people who have experience in the industry. Other people who are like consumer watchdog, that are trying to hold the public accountable. Other community leaders that are invested in transparency. Like, I just hate
someone with
these systems are built to give political favors.
Yeah, no, 100% correct there. I'm not too angry about it because one day I hope to get some of those political favors. But no, I'm just joking. But no, what I agree with you on is if you're not qualified for the position, you shouldn't be appointed. Now, if she had some experience, like maybe I don't know, she worked on an oil rig or something, or actually studied energy policy.
The Senate president's daughter worked on a fucking oil rig.
I don't know.
Are you kidding me? Come on, like this is Nepo baby city, man. Like she just got her law degree when they appointed her too. Like it was ridiculous. And I remember this because I was pissed off about it at the time. It just so happened that I fucking lit a fire under their ass when I went into that public commission meeting, because it's like it was a full circle moment for me of being outraged at Florida politics, because I was outraged when she was appointed. And then there I'm sitting, I'm like, look who the fuck it is.
So anyway, if she was qualified, it would be easier to defend for sure. You need people in qualified roles. Now, if they're a nepo baby or if they're connected to someone, as long as they're qualified and they actually go through a legitimate process and it's not like a bribe or a deal, then I'm okay with it. But it doesn't seem like this way for the young Pasadomo child.
Sigh. All right.
Heavy sigh.
What other things can I
We
rage about
recently
today? I don't know. Are we
we
done
re-
raging? It's 10 minutes to the hour, so you
yeah,
tell
we
me.
were going to go see a movie soon, but you want to rant real quick about the One Big Beautiful Bill?
Ugh.
That heavy sigh makes me feel like maybe not. You're just so frustrated.
Okay. So, okay. But here's what I'll have to say about it. Whatever. None of the Democrats voted for it. The Republicans all fell in line, which
Mhm.
is basically what I knew they were going to do. I honestly feel like any of the controversy was all just so these Republicans in swingier districts could
And
kind
said
of
that
hang
they,
their hat on it in the
yep.
midterms, but they were ultimately going to do whatever Trump wanted. I think that the explosion in the budget for ICE is just insane
Mhm.
and it's going to cause us a lot of pain. And I think
Mhm.
the reductions to Medicaid are going to be a huge problem as well. In the work requirements and all that other kind of stuff. This is actually going to have
Mhm.
a long-term net negative on our economy because we
Mhm.
won't be able to keep people healthy enough to work. And that's part of the problem.
Well, again, if I'm not necessarily against the work requirements with Medicaid. If someone is able to work and they're on Medicaid, they should be able to work. Now, in most states, like even in the state of Florida, you're really only able to be on Medicaid if you're a single parent
Correct.
or disabled. So you're already not able to work. But I agree with you there in the sense that if they're going to be, you need to have them make sure that they have health care so that way and be healthy so that way they can work. So I haven't fully read the bill in terms of the provisions and the heightened restrictions, especially on welfare programs. I'm generally okay with requiring work because again, these welfare programs really should be a hand up, not a handout. But we also have to remember too, you do have a lot of people who are on welfare programs that work full time, that do still need that to make ends meet. Unfortunately, I know a lot of my fellow Republicans who are like real estate owners and all that stuff, but because they have families, they have to be on food stamps. So it is something that you did see a lot of populist Republicans like Josh Hawley and Tom Tillis who really paid, they definitely paid the price, saying that this will affect MAGA Republicans, real people who voted for Trump would be affected by this. And so it is one of those things where I once again point out that we need to have not one big beautiful budget every single year, but we need to have individual appropriations because this is what ends up happening all the time is we get everything bloated in one thing and then people who don't want one particular thing are basically forced to vote for all of it. And then what ends up happening is let's say you voted for it. Okay, you voted for Medicaid cuts and this and that. Oh, you voted against it. Well, now you voted for no tax on tips and a 68% tax increase or something, all of that type of stuff. So because they're cherry picking the good or the bad parts, you're damned if you do, you damned if you don't. So we really need to have a reform on our budgetary process where we
Mhm.
appropriate individual parts of the budget individually. And those parts that are uncontroversial and will get funded, it's like with city council, you have a consent agenda, right? All these things are so easy to pass, and then you have debate on the harder stuff. That's how it should be. And that's where I think that if Congress really wanted to do their job, which let's be honest, they do not,
They do not.
they would do that. And I think all of this stuff with the budget also needs to be taken into consideration both with revenue and with costs. The tariffs are about to come back. All right. So the 3 month debt the extension that Trump gave is about to be done, and we're going to see tariffs again, which is going to lead to another inflationary issue. That's just how it is. Now, hopefully, I'm wrong. There have been some varying reports on that. But at the end of the day, once the tariffs come back, that will both bring in more revenue in theory, but also what will be the economic effects in terms of affordability, which is what I think is one of our biggest political issues. It's actually
Mhm.
the reason why, if you were everyone else, we didn't really talk about in New York City, the Democratic Socialists being nominated for mayor. reason he got nominated, the reason they chose him in such a landslide victory is because of affordability. And New
Mhm.
York, always an affordable city, but we are seeing affordability issues here in Lee County. And I fear it's going to get worse before it gets better. I absolutely
Yeah,
believe in tariffs as a part of a wider industrial policy after we've actually built up our industry. This idea that we're just going to have tariffs and then factories are going to magically come back to life. That's not how it works. We really need to build up our internal industry first, so that
yeah,
way all the other industries out there that have to import to keep their businesses afloat, especially our small businesses, so that way that industry is back home so they can actually bring it in domestically.
on
That's
their
when you bring
supply
in
chain.
tariffs. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Um, so this the big beautiful bill, by the way, first of all, is actually fiscal 2024. So this is only good through September. So
Oh
we're
my
actually
God.
going to
No! This has been a Democrat and a Republican walking on fire. I have been your Democratic host. I am
no,
your Republican
not
host. I
yet.
am your
So
Republican host. I am definitely your very stressed out Republican host.
so we're going to be having another one. Probably you're coming up here in August. We're going to have another budget discussion because yeah, that's how it works. Second thing, we're talking about it being the largest wealth
Why?
transfer upwards. So we're talking about this significantly increasing the discrepancies between the lowest income Americans and the top earners, which is
Mhm.
going to further stress social and cultural issues in our country, as well as
Yep.
create economic strain. So,
Which
and
will
yes,
Republicans, hang
other
on, I
economists are
will
saying
say this.
10 to 15% from the incoming Trump
And
tariffs. So,
also,
yes,
also,
this has
I
been a
want to,
Democrat or Republican.
yes, to that point, I want to remind Republicans that a wider gap of income inequality will lead to more populist and possibly more socialist candidates and wins. So
And
that's
civil unrest is what you get, by the way.
civil unrest is also a major issue as well, which is something I'm always very afraid of when it comes to our partisanship in the country, which is why we do this show. So now it has been a Democratic and Republican walk into a bar. I have been your Republican host, Sean Hartman.
And I am your Democratic host, Cindy Banier. Thank you so much for joining us here. We would love to have you support us further to help keep this show going. You can subscribe, get a paid subscription. You can do $5 a month. You can do an annual plan that will help us produce this show and keep things going. Learn more on the plans and pricing page at bigmouthmediafl.com. And we hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.